All right, welcome back, everyone. Lissa, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We're going to talk about redeeming our time, as your business is called Redeem Her Time. We're going to talk about being good stewards of our time. We're going to talk about the 7 principles of really reaping that hundredfold harvest and seeing growth in our business and our lives, growing and expanding in our faith, our relationship with God, all of those things. So I'm excited to have you on the show today. And let's start by helping everyone just to get to know you a little bit better. So share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do in the world.
Yes. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. I pray this is going to be a good use of time for us as well as everyone who listens today. So, my name is Lissa Figgins. I am a recovering busyness owner, which means I was addicted to
I love that.
multitasking, to-do list making, always doing. I was the mom, and I hate to say this, that I was there in body, but I was not ever really truly present in the present because I was always thinking about what else I needed to do
Yeah.
or what didn't get done. My kids are now all grown and out of the house. So I long for the days that you're having with Madison right now. We did homeschool for a season, and it was such a gift to have that
Mhm.
time together and pour into
Yeah.
them. And they're all walking with the Lord, which is amazing. About to be a
Yeah.
grandma in just a couple of
That's
months. And so
wonderful.
I'm excited for that next phase. Yeah, but back in the day, I was just always, like I said, I was always doing, and I ignored the signs. It started with a guilt tug of war, like all the things I should be doing, right? When you're with your family, you're thinking about all the things you should be or could be doing in your business.
Yeah.
When you're working on your business, you're thinking about all the things you should or could be doing
Yeah.
with your family, right? And for me, then I too, like I always had this like pit in my stomach and like tension in my shoulders and a ball in my throat that, of course, I kept ignoring, but my body was keeping score until it finally was there for over a year.
Mhm.
And I went and saw a specialist. He scoped, put a camera down there, and he sat me down. I remember going into his office for this conversation. He said, Lissa, there's nothing growing in your throat, so you can put that fear to rest now. You have hystericus globus. And I remember sitting there going, what's hystericus globus? He said, globe like a ball. You have this sensation of a ball in your throat. And hystericus, and he starts swirling his finger next to his head like you're crazy. He's like, it's all in your head. You have anxiety around all the things you're doing all the time. And that's why you feel like there's always something there. And so, really, it was like God getting my attention and saying, Lissa, you have to slow down. And your busyness is not because you don't have a calendar that's organized, because I had all the time management pieces already at this point,
Yeah.
because your heart
Yeah.
is disordered. I was running all
Yeah.
day long after all these lesser things you and I talked about when you were on my podcast, trying to fill that God-shaped hole with other things, right? We're
Mhm.
chasing this elusive, success. We're chasing happiness in a relationship or in health or things like that. And I was chasing my not enoughness. My time
Yeah.
wasn't enough. My doing wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. It's like this slippery slope, right? And so it's been this
Mhm.
journey to like unhurry my heart, to slow down and not feel like I'm not being productive if I'm not like, checking boxes, and really listen to God's voice. And so
Yeah.
Redeemer Time actually was born in the pew when God just brought Ephesians 5:15 through 16 right into my spirit. I wrote it on the back of the bulletin that day. Look carefully how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time because these are difficult days. Like it takes attention and intention to make either wise or unwise choices to invest in what matters, right? And God has
Yeah.
trusted our lives, our businesses, our bodies, our relationships, like these things to us. And so, how are we using the gifts He's given us? But when I looked around, I saw a lot of women who were just busy, 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 always busy, just staying busy. And we would paste this smile on like it's His badge of honor.
Yeah.
And, I started saying, like, God, is this what you have for us?
Yeah.
You really want us to be busy in life? Is this even what we want at the end of our life? Like, Lissa was busy all of her life. No, right?
Mhm.
And so I found that like this was this thing that we all struggle with at some level is this
Yeah.
issue of time, right? And so my mission is to help Christian women business owners to shift everything about how they approach time, to avoid the time burnout and increase their what I call RODI, the return on time invested for God's
Yeah.
glory, right? To build something
Yeah.
that's bigger than us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so good. And such a powerful story because, I think when God wants to get our attention, he gives us something that we can't outwork.
Exactly. And I tried to. I ignored it for a year, girl.
Right.
It
Right.
was
Right.
time.
So, for everyone listening, hear what I just said, right? When God wants to get our attention, he gives us something that we can't outwork. Because for elite performers, which my show is, that's what people are that listen to this show. They work hard, they focus, their calendar is managed, they understand business, they understand strategy and scale, they're running successful companies already. And so God knows that our go-to is we will outwork any challenge that comes our way. Right. And when he wants to get our attention, he gives us a little gift that can only be unwrapped through him. Right. Yes. And I think that's the story you're telling here, Lissa. Now, so at that time, you said you had all the time management strategies, you had all the organizational things, all of that was there. So what did you do? How did you start this transformation?
Yeah. Well, it started by my dad sending me a book by a pastor called John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. If you haven't read it, it needs to be on your list. And he sent me a note and said, I hope I didn't just offend you. And it was like one of those things, like, you know, Amazon delivered it, but it was really from God. And it was this reminder of like, your time is a gift from me. Yeah. It is not this limited resource that you have to run around like the rest of the world trying to get under control, because if you don't, it's going to somehow get through your fingers. Yeah. That's how we approach time. And we're told that time management is the solution, that I just need to be better at managing my time and then everything will be under control. Well, how long does that work? Like we get everything lined up and then life happens, right? The interruption happens, the accident happens, the whatever, right? Yeah. And really God starts shifting my spirit around, like, time is a gift. He lays 24 hours in front of us each and every day, like he laid in front of the children of Israel, the manna, right? They couldn't make it on their own. They couldn't save up from yesterday or borrow from tomorrow. And the same is true with our time. And so when I really stopped just looking at the amount of time itself, but the value and the purpose of time, that's when things started shifting. And I realized time is not something I'm supposed to chase. I'm supposed to receive it. And it's not something I'm supposed to manage, keep contained or under control. I'm supposed to steward it. It's this gift that I've been given to invest to build something bigger than me. And so really it was just this whole perspective shift. And then, like you and I talked about, when you start listening to the Lord about things, especially around our time, it starts changing how we invest it and how we use it. I'm not just wasting it, you know, all day long on all the things that are coming across my device, when I realize this has value and it really doesn't even belong to me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When you're working with already successful leaders that are running companies, what do you see as some of the top culprits where their time is still going that kind of put them in that pursuit of the hurry versus the return on that time invested?
Right. Here's what I love. Like, time is the great equalizer, because every single one of us, no matter how much money you're making right now, we all get 24 hours, right? Yep. And so time is also the greatest differentiator. And what I find is that, you know, people who are very successful in business, they understand, we understand this concept that time is money. We hear that all the time, right? But I really say, like, actually, time is so much more than that. Time is everything, because where we are is the consequence of how we've chosen to invest time up till now, right? And it is this most valuable resource. And we have to pay attention to not just where is it going, but what kind of return are we getting? Like, you wouldn't invest money and not pay attention to, am I actually making something back with this? Yeah. Right. But here's what I find happens, that even when you are at the 6, 7, 8-figure earner level, you can still very often feel behind, scattered, random, right? Like thinking that the solution is going to be, I just need to get more organized. I need to get more, you know, more leads, more marketing, more offers, more team, right? Like, and yes, team does help with that time, but we end up, especially at a high level, still spending a lot of time putting out fires, reacting to requests, distracted by the ring ding ping of this, you know, device that follows this around like an extra appendage, you know, because until we address how we approach time as a leader, then sometimes we can be making lots of money, but it's still what I call a busyness, right? We're still just being busy, checking boxes and things like that, filling our calendar, right? And then we're also leading a busyness team, because as the leader goes, right, so are those that they are leading. And so it really starts with us saying, how can I see my time as this gift? And it really slows you down. And I think that's where maybe, like you mentioned earlier, we tend to push through. We tend to work hard. I'm going to give more hours. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to be more focused. I am going to do more to try to get more out of my time. And so really it's this, like, if you want to scale to that next level, you have to have this, what I call a hundredfold time perspective. And hundredfold, right, we hear it in scripture, right, like, is like 10,000% increase. That is not something that Kelly or Lissa can outwork and make happen on our own. And here's where then I now have to start really trusting God with not only the time I have, that it's enough or more than enough, but also that he is going to bring the results from the way that I'm trusting him and obeying him and how I'm investing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say for you would be the biggest difference between how you use your time now and how you structure yourself versus how you did? Because you
Yeah.
said you were always organized, you were strategic, you were a planner, you had all of those things, but how did this process transform that?
Yes, yes. So that first thing is really around, like back in the day, I would have told you, Kelly, I don't have enough time. And I think we say some version of that at a lot of levels of business, right? It's just like, I ran out of time. If there was time, when there's time, like time got away from me, some version of that, right? So that first step is recognizing the abundance of the time we have, that it's not this limited resource, and things like that. I think the second one is really shifting how we see our role around time, right? Like I am not just here to be a manager. Watch a manager at a fast food restaurant, which, they're running around trying to keep all their ducks in a row, right? And it's very like whack-a-mole all day long. It's a game you'll never win because things are always going to whatever, right? And so really it's this like, how am I called to steward it? And I love this story Jesus tells in Matthew 25 about the parable of the talents. At least that's what we call it. I like to call it the parable of the servants, where the one guy got one talent. Don't feel bad for him. That was 20 years wages. So take whatever you earned in 2024 times 20. He had a lot. But how did he respond to what he'd been given? He kept it contained and controlled. That's the definition of manage. He kept it buried. And then he just, okay, here it is back, master. And what did the master say to him? Like, get away from me, you wicked and lazy servant. But those other two guys, it didn't matter that one got 2, one got 5. It was their perspective on their role was not to keep it contained. It was to steward it, to invest it, to build the assets of someone else. So I think when we approach it, if I were to give you, $1,000 or $10,000 and it said, Kelly, please invest this on my behalf and bring me a return. Would you be like shopping on Amazon with it? Would you be, kind of like not really paying attention to where it was going? No, because you would say, hey, this is Lissa's money. How am I investing it such that, I am being very intentional. So it's bringing that return. And I think that's the same thing with our time. And so then when you come across opportunities, then we can make those what I call wise CEO decisions. And I've defined a CEO as a Christ-empowered operator of the business that God has given us, right? So it's not just, does this feel good in the moment to Lissa, but like, because I've spent that time with him, is this an invitation or is this a distraction? Is this something that he's sending my way? And I think that discernment is really important, especially at a high level. You're going to get a lot of invitations. You're going to get a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of people that are going to want your time. And you have to be discerning about where you are going to invest your time and what kind of return on investment that's going to be.
Yeah, no, that's really good. It's really good. Yeah. So, I mean, as anything comes your way, right? It's like, is this being sent to me as a gift from God, or is this a distraction that's taking me away from, where God would have me or where God, wants to see me? I think that's a really powerful.
I think we all run into what I call the 4 shuns, because I think this fits really well here. Expectations, what other people think we should do. And then you find that at any level, right? Probably especially more the higher level you get. Obligations, what you think you owe someone else. Interruptions, just life happens, right? And then the distractions, which again, right now there are so many digital distractions, but there are a lot of internal distractions as well. And so as wise CEOs that do get, instead of not, I only get 24 hours in a day, I get 24 hours in a day. There's where that intention comes around, that discernment around how we're investing it to really bring the best return.
Really good. Really good. So I know one of the things that you teach about is kind of the 7 principles of the harvest. And I know you have an amazing resource around that. So I would love for you to give just a little bit of the premise of that and what some of those principles are. And then we'll let everybody download the resource so that they can get the full scope of the strategy. But why don't you first start by explaining, like, what is this exactly? How did you come up with this? Why does it matter? Then we can talk about a little bit of what they are.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, because this is how we, as ambitious entrepreneurs who want to make a bigger impact, this is how we invest our 24 hours and reap what I call a 100-fold harvest, right? So a typical return on a harvest, if I live in a farming community, so I get to watch lots of farmers in the fields, different seasons. they have a good year. I think a good yield on wheat is like 20 fold,
Uh-huh.
right? So
Uh-huh.
hundredfold is like, oh my goodness, all the farmers are going to be talking. What in the world is he doing? Because, or she doing to get that kind of return? And
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing. Kingdom math is not like the world's math.
Yeah.
World's math, you and I had this conversation on how we build our business, is very like linear. It's addition and subtraction, and right? If I want to earn more, I have to do more and I have to put in more hours and I have to, those kinds of things. God's math is multiplication and
Mm-hmm.
exponents, right?
Yeah.
Exponents where things are going to the powers. I used to be a math
Yeah.
teacher, and so I loved seeing how those numbers would grow, right? And when God is in the
Yeah.
process, this is where it really came to me was Matthew 13, where we talk about the parable of the sower, right? And the soils that the seed falls on. That good soil yielded that hundredfold
Yeah.
harvest, which is
Yeah.
a 10,000% increase, like we said, right?
Yeah.
And here's what I say with God, there is always an abundant ROI because
Yeah.
God doesn't do anything like just a little bit, right? He is exceedingly abundantly beyond, all that we could ask or imagine. And as we read scripture, I'm actually reading through scripture this year looking for like fruitfulness, anything related to that. Like, how does that happen? Right. And John 15:8 says, it's to my glory that you bear much fruit, not some fruit, much fruit. Why? Because it proves that you're mine, that you're my disciples. And so,
Mm.
really, this hundredfold abundance in our business or in any area of our life is not about, hey, look at Kelly, isn't she amazing? Hey, look at Lissa, she's rocking and rolling. It's not look at me, it's look at him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really see the key to the hundredfold harvest is leveraging the 7 laws of the harvest, which come
Mm-hmm.
out of Galatians 6. And I love, again, living in this rural community. I get to see this happening. Our time are the
Mm-hmm.
seeds, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you start looking at the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, the years, as these seeds God has entrusted to you, the
Mm-hmm.
fields now are the businesses, the relationships, the body, these things he's
Yeah.
called us to plant them in, right? And then our job is to do the sowing. And when
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some research on this for a training I recently did, to sow means to plant for growth and to set a process in motion. So it's not until I sow the seeds of my time that I
Mm-hmm.
am going to set this growth process in motion, right?
Mm-hmm. That's so
And
good.
then there's a lot of faith. I mean, farmers, they're doing their part, and then there's a lot of but
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
they can't
Yeah, there
control the
is. Yep.
weather, they
Yep.
can't control the rain, they can't control the
100%.
temperatures, like all of these things. And so wise CEOs, just like wise farmers, are not about to waste their time or money, right? They really are going to start leveraging, what these laws of the harvest are, which are biblical laws and natural laws, like just how
Mm-hmm.
do things work. So we're all familiar. I'll just kind of highlight a couple, and then you guys can download the resource to get the rest.
Yeah.
Everybody's familiar with we reap what we sow, right? Like, oh yeah, you reap what you sow. Everybody knows that part. But it goes deeper than that. There are actually 7 laws of the harvest. So CEOs also understand law of the harvest number 3. We reap in a different season than we sow. That has everything to do with our time. No farmer expects
Mm-hmm.
to put a seed in the ground and get an
So
instant,
good.
piece of fruit or, a plant or whatever they're growing, right? Now,
Yep.
here's where the Bible talks about in due season, you will reap a harvest, right? Which ties
Yeah.
into law of the harvest number 7. We reap what we sow if we don't give up,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
how often do we want to just like jump over that process? We want to jump over that time. We want to make it happen. What would happen if that farmer went out and started pulling up the plants before they were ready because he was just wanted the harvest?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to miss out on the hundredfold kind of growth,
It's
right?
so good.
And
It's
so
so
all
good.
7, it's so cool how all 7 laws of the harvest have everything to do with our time, our perspective on time, and our return on time invested, our RODI, right? And when we put these together, this is how we see the hundredfold harvest that only God can bring, right? And I love that. Like it's not just in the New Testament, it also happens in Genesis when we hear Isaac is going, he doesn't even have a land of his own. He has a really small family at this point. Like God promised Abraham, you're going to be as numerous as the stars. Talk about abundance, right? Right now, he's got
Yep.
this little family and they're
Yep.
vagabonds. They don't own anything. And God
Yep.
says, go into the land of the Philistines and
Yep.
plant yourself there. Okay,
Yep.
hello. We all know the Philistines are going to be their enemies one day. So that's
Yep.
kind of crazy, right? But here's the thing there's this little verse in Genesis 26 that says that Isaac sowed and he reaped a hundredfold harvest in the same year. And it's like this little short verse that I've always passed over until I really like got a hold of this is the kind of growth God brings when we do it with him. We do our part of the
Mm.
sowing, right? We trust him in that in-between time, of the growth happening. And in due season, he brings the harvest, and it's not just a meager one, it's the hundredfold type, right?
Yes.
So yeah, as powerful as just those 3 laws of the harvest are that I just shared, like wait until you leverage all 7 of them. But what I
Oh
always
my
say is this
gosh.
is not prosperity gospel. This is not like if you follow this exact formula, you are guaranteed, these things in
Yeah.
this time frame. It still involves faith, but they are
Mhm.
natural laws that do lead to abundant exponential growth, which is beautiful for your audience because it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
level of income you're at. We are
Yeah.
always growing. I am never going to be done growing
Yeah.
myself, my relationship with the Lord, and the impact and influence that I have through my business. And I
Yeah.
know that you and your listeners aren't either.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. This is so unbelievably powerful. I made some notes when you were sharing that, and I definitely encourage everyone here to download the full guide. I mean, this is it, right? This is the stuff because the reason why so many businesses are struggling right now is that they give up hope, they give up faith, and that we forget these simple laws, which is that we don't reap the harvest the same season that we sow. Right. And your return does come when you do not give up faith. And, it goes back to kind of the conversation you and I were having also on your show. We were talking about the difference between Chronos time and Kairos time. And, the arbitrary timelines that we set on things that maybe are not in alignment with God's will for our life is the reason why so many people give up, or they're so overwhelmed or so fearful or so anxious about what's happening in their business because their expectation for when something should happen, how it should happen, is not congruent with God's will. And we get so forceful and we throw our adult temper tantrums so many times. No, it's true. We do.
You're right. We
We
do.
do. And so we throw our hands up and we say, well, this must not be for me.
Yes, yes.
This
Yeah. Or I
must
just have
not
to
be
work
for
harder
me.
to push through. That could be the other
Uh-huh.
response, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
So
when you just said that,
yeah.
I just want to kind of go back to something you said earlier. And you said this on my show. Chronos
Mhm.
time is man's time.
Mhm.
Kairos time is God's time. And
Mhm.
here's what we tend to do, especially at a high level, right? Like your listeners are. We tend to focus on the amount of time
Mhm.
versus the value of the time.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's where now, yeah, someone who's scrappy and they're just in those first couple of years of business and they're just trying to get to that first 100K or whatever that is, like they're just focusing on maximizing the time and working more hours,
Yeah.
all of that, right? But you
Yeah.
understand that in order, first of all, you and I can't change anything about our time. Yes,
Yeah.
we have this magical day once a year where we get an extra hour in our day, but it doesn't change our life,
Yeah.
right?
For sure. For sure.
Daylight savings time is not, that 1 hour we think is going to change
Yeah.
everything. Doesn't, because it's not about the amount of time we
Yeah.
have.
100%.
It's about the value
Yeah.
that comes out of the way we invest it. And that
Yep.
comes from listening to, number one, knowing that our time is a gift. And number two, that our role is to steward it. And then
Yep.
we ask this really important question. I would love to kind of end with this because this is so simple that I think sometimes we think that it has to be harder than this.
Mhm.
We run around all day long asking the question, what time is it? And what happens when you ask that question? Your shoulders go up because you're all of a sudden in like, where do I have to be? What do I need to do? What deadline did I miss? Like you
Yeah.
said, right? Here's the question that I teach my clients to ask. From what time is it to what is it time for? Like when you ask that question, my shoulders went down. I actually slow down my brain and think, because I am
Mhm.
presupposing there is time in front of me and there's a purpose to
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
by paying attention to that, and that's where I think the people that you're talking to, they don't want to stay in the my brain is always up here. What time is it? And I'm hitting up against that elusive timeline
Yeah.
and got, man's time. They want to live in the Kairos. They want to live
Yeah.
in these moments that have lots of purpose, that the impact of those moments is something beyond what you could have done on your
Yeah.
own. That's the
Yeah.
hundredfold, right?
That's it. I love it. I love it. Well, I know there's people sitting here that want to continue this conversation. They want to learn more. They want to get the guide. They want to check out everything that you're doing. So, obviously, for everyone listening, the link to the 7 laws of the harvest is going to be in the show notes down below. But, Lissa, where would you invite people to go next if they want to connect with you?
I would say if you love listening to Kelly, come over and listen to the Redeem Her Time podcast because we talk about life and faith and business and how our time and our roadie is all tied up in that. And we ask the question, what is it time for? And then we get intentional, right, about partnering with God to build, to plant, right, to sow the seeds in the fields he's given us to produce the hundredfold growth that gives him the glory. So yeah, come follow us over on the Redeem Her Time podcast. I would love to hang out with you there.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Thank you so much, Lissa, for a beautiful conversation today. You all know that sharing is caring. So take the link to this episode, share it with a friend, get this in someone's earbuds that you know can make a difference for, and we'll see you on the next episode.